Hey everyone, Ray here. Right, as we're marching into the second half of the year, this is it, the Honor Magic V6, the second foldable phone we're meeting this year, after the Oppo Find N6 which I've reviewed back in a month or two before. Now, the major upgrade this year might or might not be what we've been expecting. Here we've got a 4.1mm thin chassis on the red, black and gold variant. We're actually looking at a 4mm thin body if we're talking about the white variant. Now, that's not a whole lot of difference if you're comparing it to the last generation, but on the V6 here, I do feel that they're putting even more effort in strengthening the hinge here. They're basically onto the territory of the Samsung Fold 7 when it comes to the sturdiness of the hinge, to the touch, and when we're folding it and unfolding it. They've even put an anti-reflective coating here on the outer display and the inner display. For that, we'll actually have to see if the upcoming Samsung Fold will be doing the same here. Now, multitasking experience will also be looking into that as well. And what about the battery? Here we've got a 6600 mAh battery, silicon carbon battery here inside this razor-thin body. How does it actually perform in the real world? I've got you covered. We'll be doing a battery drain test from 100 to 0% in the second half of this video. Without further ado, the design and hardware. Now, the red variant here, alongside the black and gold variant, actually weigh about 224 grams and measured at around 9mm thick. While here, the white variant, they're certainly pushing the limit. Now it weighs only about 219 grams and measured at around 8.8mm when folded. 8.75mm if we're according to their official numbers. Apparently, what stopped them from further shrinking the thinness of the body would be the USB-C port here. To be fair, these kind of numbers, 220 grams and 9mm thin, that's roughly the same as any other flagship smartphones. Now, real-world battery life and cooling would be the real bottleneck here. We'll definitely see how do they deal with it. Right, it's actually worth mentioning here that they've managed to put IP68 and IP69 water industry resistance here on a foldable phone with all those movable parts. The side-mounted fingerprint sensor and power buttons also here. Now, the massive battery here also charges at a rate of 80W wired and 66W wireless. The outer display here is also truly delightful to use, as we've finally got an anti-reflective coating here. As you can see here, the black is even darker, with all those light reflections from the surrounding. Every color pops here. Now, the front display itself is a 20:9 panel. The peak brightness here can actually go all the way up to 6000 nits. For sure, we're talking about the maximum brightness of a tiny portion of the display when playing back HDR video. Now, it's an 1080p panel here, but it's measured at only about 6.52 inches, which is quite decent to use. Not massive and not too small, but decent. What truly surprised me is here the anti-reflective coating on the new V6. If I'm not wrong, it's the first time for them to do this on any of their flagship smartphones. Not even on their recent Honor Magic 8 Pro, which is a surprise. And if I'm not wrong, it's the only foldable phone which has an anti-reflective screen on the front. Now, let's move on before I start to exaggerate it here. It's worth noticing here, however, according to their figures, the anti-scratch coating's actually making the glass so much more drop and scratch resistant. They're also claiming the coating's now 3 times less prone to wear and tear. They've actually put up quite a good test here. Right, the phone's still good to go. It should be alright delivering good enough drop and scratch resistance all the way up to 36 months if you're totally relying on the screen itself, not using any sort of screen protector, just like me sometimes. Alright, moment of truth, we are looking at a 7.95-inch display here on the inner side of the device. We've actually got LTPO technology on both the inner display and the outer one. We may take 120Hz refresh rate for granted here. Now, the maximum brightness on the inner display can actually go all the way up to 5000 nits. Again, that's only for a portion of the display when playing back HDR videos. Now, what I was trying to show here is, whenever I was watching a video, you'll naturally expect all those black bars on the top side and the bottom side of the display. Now, for this kind of book-style foldable, it's always 1+1 or even more for me. As you can see here, you'll be able to watch a video in landscape full screen on half of the display and do other stuffs on the other half of the display there. It's always like holding 2 phones at once more than a mini tablet only for videos and games. For sure, I really liked the trifold. It's a perfect blend of a phone and a tablet. And when it comes to multitasking, the multitasking interface here on the Honor, they've got a taskbar sort of integration here. Whenever you swipe your fingers upwards from the bottom edge of the display, there you've got 3 apps running simultaneously. Now they actually allow us to resize the app across each of them. And here on the bottom right side of the taskbar, there you've got a menu of all your installed apps on the device. Once again, drag and drop, there you've got the multitasking interface here running 2 apps at a time. Let's see how many apps can it actually run at a time. Now the interesting bit here is they've actually got a totally different approach when it comes to multitasking. On the Galaxy, they actually allow us to split the screen into 3 different sections, while keeping all 3 of them usable all at once. Here on the Honor, they are actually prioritizing larger window per app. Right, we're having a larger window, a resizable window here. But the trade-off is we'll only be able to interact with 1 or maximum 2 apps at a time, having the third one always waiting on the side. And how many pop-up windows we can have here? The first one here, on top of all those split windows, is a resizable and movable window. Now the second one is a really interesting approach here once again, just different from the Galaxy, as they allow us to run even more pop-up windows on top of all those multi-windows apps. While here on the Honor, you'll simply be able to do 1. Not 1, but the other apps which you've just launched will be stored here as recent apps. In my opinion, it certainly limits the number of apps which you can run at a time, but the quality of the interaction could be better here as we are dealing with larger window size per app here. Now when it comes to the foldable display here, we definitely cannot skip Crease control. Right, if you're searching for it, it's still there, not totally absent, but I think it's quite fair to say it's up to a point that whenever you've switched on the display, whenever there's something playing there, you'll definitely forget about it as long as you've got something playing there, or even when you're having a black screen. In my opinion, the anti-reflective coating's playing a huge role here, and after all the years, they've finally implemented ultra-thin glass here. The display is now much more uniform, much more durable, and way nicer to touch. It just feels way sturdier than before when it comes to the touch. And as you can see here, they've actually applied a screen protector here by default out of the box with the anti-reflective coating there. I do think they consider this as part of the display, so I do not recommend you to remove it after you've got the device. For me, in my local market, they actually provide 2 times screen protector replacement for free in the first year. It's a brilliant display indeed, both the inner one and the outer one. The anti-reflective coating here is doing a great job this year. Now, as we're looking at a foldable phone, the hinge mechanism here is definitely the highlight. To start off with, let's explore the smallest angle that it can sustain itself, from here all the way to roughly about here. Now it's more like 90 degrees. Let's try to dial it back slightly here. Now I must say the Samsung Fold 7 still offering a wider range when it comes to the angle, the smallest angle to the widest angle, so the hinge can provide enough of strength to hold itself in place, but the Honor is doing an absolutely alright job here, using it as a built-in tripod, taking a long-form video or a group video. That would be a no problem here. To be fair, the Honor's coming with quite a large camera bump here. It's almost like a camera flagship. It certainly adds up to the weight of the upper panel here. Now, the widest possible angle that the hinge can sustain itself is roughly about here. Now look, it's not quite as wide as the Fold 7, but it's decent enough I would say. It's good for video conference or watching a video on the upper half of the screen while on the go. The key is, the hinge now does feel a lot sturdier than before, so there's no unexpected wobbling effect at all, and I was even trying to hold just half of the phone and playing around with it. It's fine and it's much sturdier than before. It's now onto the Fold 7 territory. It's basically on a par with it, finally. They're definitely claiming big numbers when it comes to how much force the hinge can actually take. What matters most, however, the hinge here is absolutely a good one. It's sturdy and it's reliable for sure. Alright, speaking of reliability, how good or if it's good at all the battery is in real-world usage. Here we've come to the biggest highlight of this video. Now I'll actually be releasing a dedicated video all about battery drain test, but here I do have some interesting finding, so I decided to have it here as well. To begin with, we'll be setting the display brightness to about 250 nits on all of them, plus or minus 3 nits to be as fair as possible. Now here we'll actually be having 8 different rounds of tasks, The first one being photo editing using the built-in Gallery app and the built-in AI photo editing tools. Right, when it comes to the built-in AI photo editing tools, Honor's actually got quite a wide variety of them. Passerby removal, that's definitely a standard feature in 2026 on a flagship phone. Now that's efficient and effective. This particular one's actually not an easy one at all, as we've got all the passers-by overlapping with the architecture there on the background. Now I reckon if I circled the shadows here as well, that would be removed with no issue at all. Right, we've also got other AI goodies here, if you're into them, like AI color enhancement, as well as AI background blur, which turns an ordinary photo into one which looks like it's shot in portrait mode, right from the original photo all the way to the final image. Alright, AI style here can also be a nice touch. It basically turns a normal photo into different styles of painting, just like here. Alright, Google Gemini, we've got it here as well. What's different is here, we can actually select, pick and drop quite a few photos directly to Google Gemini using Honor's AI, the magic portal. Now, every single one of your selected photos will be uploaded to Google Gemini at once. You can then merge them, play around with them. Here we've got 2 photos which I've taken by myself, and here we've got a totally new image, if you're into it. Alright, that's 1 hour photo editing using the built-in AI photo editing tools. 97% of the battery is still here on the Honor Magic V6, not bad at all. According to the same rate, it would actually last around 33 hours and 20 minutes. It's worth noticing, however, phones tend to cling near 100% on a full charge. The first few percent usually drop slower than the rest of the journey, so we'll see. Now, during the upcoming hour, I'll be running into the benchmark 4 times in a row. On one hand, we'll be able to monitor performance output and battery drain under heavy loading, and on the other hand, we'll actually be able to monitor temperature control as well. Alright, we're almost finishing the 1 hour test here, and the back of the Honor Magic V6 is measured at only about 36.8 degrees Celsius. It's actually closer to the surface of the skin here. Really remarkable job here, Honor. The trade-off is performance output here on the Honor Magic V6 seems to be kind of restrained. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely flagship tier performance, but for a phone with a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, it's actually performing closer to the Galaxy S25 Ultra here with a last gen processor, at least on benchmarks. Great Thermals appears to be coming with slightly lower benchmark scores. We can't have it all, or can we? Now, graphics performance, we've run the popular 3D Mark Wildlife Unlimited as well, is actually on a par with all other major flagships when it comes to gaming experience, and a more heavy-duty one with ray tracing support Solar Bay Unlimited is delivering marginally lower FPS count if we're comparing it to the absolute best, the Poco F8 Ultra, which is a gaming phone. So we can conclude it's not a gaming phone for sure, but it's not a huge dent, so you can certainly game on it. Now, 1 hour of heavy-duty benchmark time has just passed. 87% of the battery is still here, while the Honor Magic 8 Pro, their flagship slab phones, got 84%. I have to say they're both doing a pretty good job in balancing performance output and battery consumption. Especially here on a Foldable, only 10% of the battery was used over the past hour, even if we're pushing it to the absolute limit. Right, for the upcoming 2 hours, I'll be leaving them here, playing YouTube videos at 250 nits as well. It can also be a great chance for them to cool down a bit. Now, 2 hours has just passed. We've got 79% of the battery left, 8% was used over 2 hours, and 78% here on the slab phone actually. Now you might probably ask, what about the inner display, as you might be watching more videos on the inner display after all. I've got you covered here, 250 nits as well. This time around we'll be looking at 1 hour of YouTube videos playback. It's worth mentioning here, however, it's done on another timeline, so the result will not affect the final battery life here from 100 to 0%. Right, the larger foldable display, the inner display is actually using slightly more battery compared to the Ultra one. If you ask me, that's certainly not bad at all. Based on the same rate, you'll be able to watch YouTube videos on the inner display for about 20 hours and 25 on the Ultra display. Right, the next round of the test, or the absence of a test, I'll be leaving them here for 9 hours, overnight purely on Wi-Fi, and see if they're draining any battery at all. You're right, this video is totally not designed for the Honor Magic V6 at the very first place, so I'll be applying a slight mystery blur effect here on the right hand side of the video. I'll be releasing the final results on the upcoming video anyway. Now, 74% of the battery is still here on the Honor Magic V6 and 5% of the battery was used. 75% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Both are doing a decent job here, not the absolute best I've seen, but decent job here. Alright, back to some more serious tests here. In the upcoming hour, I'll be recording 4K videos across all of them. Once again, just to be as fair as possible, I'll be locking the focus and exposure on all of them. I've also tilted the phones a bit with a pencil underneath, lifting them up away from the bench slightly. At least the camera and I will be sure they're recording something throughout the hour. Now, as usual, I'll not only be looking into battery consumption, but temperature control as well. Once again, here on the Honor Magic V6, it was almost hitting the 1 hour mark. They're certainly doing a remarkable job here. It's only measured at around 43 degrees Celsius. Anything below 44 degrees can be considered warm to touch at most, as we may consider 50 to be the alarming mark. And speaking of the cameras, we've got a triple camera setup here with a 50 megapixels sensor for the main camera that's backed with a 1/1.56-inch sensor, a 50 megapixels ultra-wide camera that can be considered as standard, and a 64 megapixels 70mm periscope telephoto lens. Now we're actually looking at a 1/2-inch sensor here. To be fair, it's not quite on a par with all those ultra camera flagships, but on a Foldable, the closest runner-up's actually using a 1/2.75-inch sensor. It does show here low light performance and dynamic range in challenging light scenes like here. We have all the texture and details preserved on the highlights and the shadows bright enough. Portrait mode is now also quite mature as well, even on a Foldable. You've got precise and accurate edge detection here. Now zoom. The maximum zoomable range here on the V6 actually on a par with the Magic 8 Pro, which is all the way up to 100 times. Now how do they actually compare? Zooming all the way from here on the ultra-wide to 10x here on the V6 actually quite good. It's also backed with Honor's AI zoom technology here. And at 20x, I do see the photo here shot on the Honor Magic 8 Pro appear to be slightly sharper. The difference here is definitely noticeable, so I would say the Honor Magic 8 Pro is still on a par with all those ultra camera flagship when it comes to zoom, while the V6 here being not as brilliant but definitely good to go and good enough. It's great enough and it's flagship here, but it's not built for photo enthusiasts. You've got what I mean. And 1 hour 4K video recordings now finished. At the same rate, we'll actually be able to record 4K videos non-stop in one go for more than 5 hours and 50 minutes. And at the same time, the Honor Magic 8 Pros actually only got 53% of the battery left here, 4% less than the Foldable. Of course, we're using the V6 folded here. Alright, for the upcoming hour, here I've searched for a particular keywords on Instagram. I'll be playing short videos on the same playlist, just to make sure what the phones will be displaying and the rate of having videos refresh will be as close as possible, just to be as fair as possible once again. Now I'll be scrolling and refreshing the content in every minute or so. Now, after 1 hour of Instagram Reels scrolling, 50% of the battery is still here. Now, once again, in another timeline, we've used the inner display to do the exact same test. Now we've used only 7% of the battery when using the outer display, and just 1% more of the battery was consumed when using the inner display. At the same rate, we'll actually be able to scroll along Instagram for 12.5 hours using the inner display, and 14 hours and 17 minutes using the outer one. Right, we're back and continue with the journey. Now, in the upcoming hour, I'll be using the built-in voice memo app here, recording a speech. In this case, it would be another video of mine. At the same time, using the speech-to-text feature, right after an hour of voice recording alongside with all those AI goodies, 5% of the battery was used. At the same rate, you'll actually be able to do voice recording and AI transcript, AI speech-to-text for 20 hours. Now, as we've come to the final round of the test, it's been 7.5 hours here. Now, I'll be trying to drain the battery once and for all using 3D Mark. Battery consumption's definitely going off the chart here. I actually wonder what game will actually use 30% of the battery in just 1 hour, but I've done the same test on every single phone that I've tested, so fair enough. At the same rate, it will last slightly more than 3 hours, 3 hours and 20 minutes to be exact. And surprisingly, the Honor Magic V6 and the 8 Pro are actually the only two phones that are still surviving after 8.5 hours of use. And the first one to be returning home will be the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Surprisingly, it lasted 9 hours and 1 minute to be exact. Odd enough, leaving the Honor Magic V6 to be the only surviving phone here. Oh, and the extra round here we're doing, I was recording 4K videos once again. Not too light, playing YouTube videos will be totally unfair to the rest of the phones. Only at 9 hours and 17 minutes, the Honor Magic V6 finally taking some rest. Now, the battery life here on the Honor Magic V6 when folded is absolutely stunning. It actually outperformed many other slab phones. Now, the exact figure for the Galaxy S26 Ultra, the Sony Xperia, the Ultra flagship from Vivo and Oppo, will be having another dedicated camera just for that. But as we can tell here, the Honor Magic V6 actually outperforming all of them. It's interesting to see that. The only phone that is still significantly leading the chart is the Poco X8 Pro Max, which has a gigantic 8500 mAh battery. All in all, build quality is brilliant, the phone's solid to hold, and the hinge is sturdier than before. The design, the black and the white variant is always the safer choice, but I do actually prefer the texture on the red one. Only if they're putting it onto the white variant next year, that would certainly be my favorite. The display, the anti-reflective coating on both the inner display and the outer one is absolutely brilliant. Crease controls among the best if not the absolute best, as we've got the Oppo Find N6 which is quite hard to defeat. But as far as I can tell, the displays here is absolutely brilliant. Sharp, vivid, bright and anti-reflective. Now, in terms of raw performance output of the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, it might not be as good as other gaming phones out there, which is a slab phone, but possibly due to the more conservative tuning here, it's got really brilliant heat control and absolutely stunning battery life. And ultimately, the software is smooth, decent enough for daily use, and AI features packed. Great displays, awesome battery, and a sturdy hinge. That's pretty much it for this year. So, should you shortlist it or go for it directly? At this moment, I personally wouldn't push anyone to go for it right away. Maybe we'll take a look at the upcoming Galaxy Fold as well. Now, hopefully Samsung will be able to surprise us when it comes to the battery this year. And last but not least, definitely don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. See you all next time.